Welcome to the Success Partner Podcast. I'm Daya Naef, your host and founder of The Success Partner. On this show, we dive into the stories of attorneys, business professionals, and entrepreneurs who have navigated the ups and downs of building successful careers and businesses. From the strategies they've implemented to the challenges they've overcome, we're here to uncover the insights that can help you on your own journey to success. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Success Partner Podcast. I am your host, Daya Naef, and today we have Craig Robinson in the studio. Craig is a South Florida attorney, but he has a very unique practice and a very unique background. And so I'm so excited to have Craig tell us a little bit more about what you do, who you serve, and how you got to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Daya. It's great to be here. So I'm Craig Robinson. I'm an attorney and I'm also a social worker. So I have a master's of social work as well, which is kind of important for our field that I'm in. So I have a law firm called Robinson and Casey. All that we do is represent families to help them access treatment for a loved one for addiction and mental health, even when it feels out of reach. And so we do that through something called the Marchman Act, which is a unique Florida law, which essentially allows families to intervene for a loved one who has addiction and co-occurring mental health issues, to utilize the court systems when they will not go to treatment, to get them there involuntarily. And it's a law that really only exists in Florida. There really isn't anything quite like it throughout the rest of the country. And so that is really all that we do. We also do mental health guardianships for certain circumstances where a guardianship might be appropriate.
So what came first, the social work or the law practice?
The law practice.
Okay.
I'm in long-term recovery myself. So I was an attorney for 10 years up in Philadelphia and New Jersey and doing civil litigation. And then I got into recovery myself. And then that's what prompted this transition into this field involving addiction and mental health.
Wow. So you know firsthand, like what a journey it is and how important it is.
Yeah. We have a phrase kind of in our firm, that we utilize. It's "we've been there," and that for us means that both myself and Richard Casey, who's my law partner, we're both in long-term recovery and both have kind of dealt with issues with addiction and mental health, both personally and in our families as well. So it is something that's deeply personal to us to help the families that come to us, and we really try to treat each family as though we would treat our own.
Yeah, that's great. I saw that with the family and what is family, this type of recovery and addiction and all that is very much a family matter. As far as you and Richard going into a partnership together, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I actually was in treatment for my addiction actually just about 7 years ago. And while I was in treatment, Richard was actually working at the treatment center that I was in. He had been there as a patient himself a few years prior to that. And I had an incredible therapist who, Richard wasn't in a role where he would typically meet with patients, but my therapist thought that it would be helpful and beneficial if we met. And so she introduced us in a therapy session, actually. And, at that time, I was considering taking the Florida bar, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. That's where the social work degree came in, actually, is that I thought I might want to be a therapist and get into the behavioral health field in that capacity. And so I went back to school for my master's of social work. And Richard and I became really close as friends and colleagues. And we started Robinson and Casey in 2021 because we just recognized that there were so many families out there that could benefit from this kind of work. And it made sense for both of us being in recovery to really work to help represent those families. And ultimately, even though we're representing technically the families in the legal case, we're really representing the person who's being subject to the Marchman Act to their best interest, because the ultimate goal is that that person gets well throughout this process. So it's this really interesting, I'm used to law in my 10 years of practice in civil litigation to being very adversarial. And this kind of law is different because the reality is that we all want the same thing. Everybody wants the family to be well and the individual who's going to treatment to get well through this process. It's just that sometimes there's differing viewpoints on how we get there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that people move to Florida to avail themselves of this?
Yeah. I mean, I actually, that's the reason why I ended up in Florida. Florida happens to be, and especially South Florida happens to be an area that's really concentrated with a lot of treatment centers, and it tends to be a place that people come for recovery. On top of that, we have this very beneficial law that families can take advantage of, and the families and their loved ones don't have to be from Florida to utilize the law. So it only requires that someone be physically present here. And so a lot of families will find out about this law and they will strategize to bring their loved one here to take advantage of the favorable law. And these are families too, Daya, that they've tried everything else for the most part. They've tried to get their loved one to go voluntarily. They've tried the intervention. They've tried different other modalities, and really nothing has worked. It's usually when they get to us, it's kind of like we've tried everything else and we need some other kind of a solution.
Yeah, that's great. A great thing that obviously I have a nationwide listenership, and so now they've probably hearing for the first time about something like this.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it existed in more states too. There is some movement in some other states where there's laws that have been proposed or being proposed that are kind of similar to the law, but for right now, we really haven't found anything else that's quite like it in any other state, unfortunately. And the best part about it too, I'll just add this too, Daya, is that most states have like a psychiatric stabilization law. Different states call it different things, but it's a law when someone's in a mental health crisis that usually allows for someone to be placed in a hospital setting like a psych ward for involuntary psychiatric stabilization. But usually those laws don't really provide any kind of a long-term solution that's a really, good, robust long-term solution. The best part about this law is that when someone is Marchman acted, they don't go to a psych ward of a hospital. They don't just go in for stabilization. They're going generally to private treatment facilities that are going to provide long-term care, and they're commingled with other patients who are there voluntarily. So it's kind of a mix. So they're around other people who want their own recovery. And what we often see is that that can become contagious, that once they're around other people who want recovery, that it starts to kind of sink in that, maybe there's a better way of life out there. And it's amazing. We've seen some real miracles happen.
Yeah, I bet. As far as maybe expanding it, was it the facilities themselves that maybe spearheaded the act going into place, or what was the history behind that?
It wasn't actually, the law's been around since 1993. And it wasn't the facilities themselves. It was actually a reverend. His name was Hal Marchman. The law is named after him. Who, my understanding, I wasn't around back then, but my understanding from reading up on it is that the Florida had something that was it was like that involuntary psychiatric stabilization law for mental illness. There was nothing really for people that were suffering from addiction that allowed for an involuntary court process. And so he saw a need for it, really was kind of this, spearheaded this law, which kind of allowed for a similar situation for people that had issues primarily with addiction. Now, I will just also mention it does require that there be a component of it that relates to substance abuse. But we have many cases where there's co-occurring disorders, and oftentimes mental health is actually the primary disorder. And there might be a component of it that's being exacerbated by substance use. But we see many cases where really mental health is, they always say, like, is it the chicken or the egg? Was it drugs that came first and that led to mental illness, or was it mental illness that led to drugs and alcohol? And for purposes of what we do, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that we get them to a treatment center that can handle either of their needs, whether it be mental health related, substance related, or a combination of the two. And then we can kind of let that facility sort out what is primary, what is secondary. Those terms primary and secondary are really kind of insurance terms,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But for our standpoint, they have to treat the whole person. And we work with some incredible facilities that do some really great work for co-occurring disorders as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like each profession has its own lingo in which category things have to be coded in. Switching gears just a little bit, since I do have a lot of listeners who are small law firm owners, I noticed from your site you have operations manager, you also have a client concierge. Tell us how those roles came to be in the small firm that is yours.
Yeah. You know, Daya, we started in 2021. As of 2023, it was still really just Richard and I. And we had one legal assistant that we brought on in 2023, but we were trying to do everything, every role in the firm. And what we realized was that if we kept going that way, number one, we were going to drive ourselves crazy, because it's hard to be the attorney and be the person doing initial consultations and dealing with reference and dealing with the facilities and then also managing the business, all these things. It's like there were some days where it was like our heads were spinning. And so we started talking about this in 2023 that you know they the scalability of the firm. And for us, what that means is that the more that we can scale, it just means the more families that we can help. And we weren't going to do that without a solid team. And so we started building that team back in 2023, really. And I think at the end of this week, we'll be like 14 or 15 people. And that includes legal assistants, it includes paralegal, it includes, as you mentioned, a client concierge. The client concierge role for us is a crucial role because our families, obviously they come to us for legal support, but the reality is when they come to us, they need a lot of support, both legal, emotional. They're going through a crisis usually. So what we thought about last year was that we could really use someone who would be their client concierge, who would be the person that would check in with them on a regular cadence. Our client concierge happens to have a master's of social work as well. So he's worked in addiction and mental health treatment for many years, over a decade prior to joining us. And he is the guy that really helps those families to navigate a lot of their anxieties and the emotional aspect of it, tries to connect them to different resources outside of us if they need that. Operations, you mentioned, Katie Tantillo is our current operations manager. We realized that if Richard and I are doing it, having policies and procedures is important for a law firm. Oftentimes the policies and procedures were right here and they weren't brought out on paper. Onboarding, if we're going to bring on new team members, onboarding and having a true onboarding program. That was something that if Richard and I had to do it on our own without help, not to say that it would never get done, but it would take longer to get done, and it would also not be as efficient and not be as well done. And all of these positions really, they lead us to being able to help more families. The more help that we have, and the better team that we develop, the way we see it, the more families that we'll be able to ultimately help. And we believe that there are a lot of families out there that don't even know that this law exists, that don't even know that this is an option for us. So one of our real missions is to make sure that we find out how to reach those families that need us, but don't even know that we're an option for them.
That's great. Well, I hope we help to get the word out. So this will be out on LinkedIn and YouTube, and hopefully we'll get some information out there to the public. So how do people find you to learn more?
So easiest place is our website, probably. I mentioned the term "we've been there," and our website is www.we'vebeenthere.com. It's also robinsoncasey.com, the name of the firm. Our main number is 561-849-4700. You can email me directly. Also, it's craig@robinsoncasey.com. Easy enough. But if you really just Google Robinson Casey, one way or another, that will lead you to us. We're located in South Florida, but we work and handle cases all throughout the state, all the way out to Pensacola and the Panhandle. So we can help any family anywhere. And if the family is out of the state or even out of the country, we have families that have brought their loved ones from other countries to Florida to take advantage of this unique law. So we really look forward to hopefully many of your listeners contacting us and being able to help them and their families.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again for coming on. And listeners, this has been Craig Robinson. And again, I'm your host, Daya Naef of the Success Partner Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Thank you for joining us on the Success Partner Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found some valuable takeaways to apply to your own business journey. Remember, this show is brought to you by The Success Partner, where we help small law firms and business owners achieve unparalleled success through strategic guidance, operational excellence, and effective marketing. If you're ready to take your business to the next level, visit thesuccesspartner.net to learn more. Until next time, keep striving for success, and I will see you in the next episode.